Hello and welcome, everyone. We are seeing people just file into the webinar, so we're going to start in about 2 minutes. But as you're logging in and as you're joining us, why don't you take the opportunity to just type in the chat where you're joining us from. So I'm going to start by hitting Norway, and really we just want to see where people are joining us from. We have people here from Brazil, from the US, Sweden, Costa Rica, Mexico, Dubai. Somebody's at 4 a.m. in Latin America. That's good. We have, there you go, wonderful, all over the place. It looks, Rick, like we're going to have quite a global crowd with us. What time do you have in California?
Lovely 3 a.m. here. Thanks for asking.
Well, thanks for joining.
Cheers.
So we have some familiar faces, and we have some familiar names, and we have some brand new faces and some brand new names. So welcome, everyone. My name is Chris. It's really my pleasure to welcome all of you, including our esteemed speakers, to this launch webinar for Strategy Tools in Action, the report. And I got to show you this. So maybe 20 minutes ago, we got a big box from the printers. And this is always kind of like, Christmas Eve when you get a chance to unpack. And the first thing that hit us was that it's much bigger than we were expecting. So everyone that has contributed, thank you very much. This is way more, both in terms of insights and content and contribution that we were expecting when we started. And I can guarantee you, if you saw the first sketches that we're going to post on social media later this week, you would see that it's quite a step up from what we first imagined. So today we're going to be meeting several of the participants, and we're going to be going through some of the ideas. We're going to be going through some of the content, but most importantly, we're going to be getting more insights from people doing the work. So we have joining us today people from Belgium, Mexico, US, Australia, Ukraine, and Italy. And they'll all be sharing their unique perspectives, their insights, and their experiences with taking strategy tools into action. So our agenda today, quick introduction. Then we're going to get some snapshots and discussions from 3 countries. Then we're going to get some more snapshots and some more discussions from 3 other countries. Then we're going to have Q&As for everyone. And then finally, we'll have a closing summary. Now, if you guys have any questions, if you guys joining us here have any questions at all, fire away and we'll catch them and pick them up as we go. We may take some of those questions during the webinar, and then we'll try to take the rest of the questions towards the end in the Q&A. So today we're really happy to be launching the Strategy Tools in Action report. It has really been simmering in our mind for quite some time. And the big idea behind it is we genuinely want to learn more about how are actually people all over the world using and applying strategy tools in action. We had some assumptions, we had some expectations, but we have been really baffled and really, really positively blown away by the diversity. And that's one of the key things I think you'll see today, the diversity in how people are approaching this. But even though they're diverse, there's a big idea here, and that is that the field of strategy is changing. And I'd like to share just a few minutes of that high level concept. What does that mean that the field of strategy is changing? And it really goes back to one of our mentors and friends, and definitely leading researchers in the field, Rita McGrath, professor at Columbia. And she said something back in 2013, 2014 that really stuck with us, when she said, to me, the next wave of work in strategy is to develop the toolkits. So not necessarily the research, but the actionable, applicable toolkits that executives and leaders and companies all around the world are going to need to really navigate in this new world of transient advantage. And I think as we were looking back at Rita's quote back in 2014, it really stuck with us how inspirational that's been to us, and also how we have at least been trying to work along that same idea that Rita put forth back in 2014. And Rita, of course, in the report writes a really, really nice, interesting forward, where she also reflects on how the world of strategy has been changing and what she has seen from her vantage point from 2014 and up to today. So why did we write this? Well, we wrote this first and foremost as a collecting insights, learning exercise. We are very curious, but along the way, we also realized that to make sense of these 18 practitioners and strategy consultants, we had also to take a step back and say, when we say the world of strategy is changing, what does that mean? So our purpose with this report is first and foremost learning from people doing the work in the field every single day. And we have several of them with us here. And second, it's really to articulate this journey of a strategy transition or strategy paradigm that's changing. And a big shout out here to David Lansfield, who's joining us from the UK. His questioning and some of the conversations we have had have really sort of helped us sharpen our thinking as well. And that's also reflected in the report. So I want to take you back to the summer of 2013. And this is 7 years ago. And sometimes we dig around in our folders, we find interesting stuff. So this is a sketch that we developed working with a client project on how is the world of strategy changing. It was a theme for a strategy summit that we had back in 2013. And as you can see, we have broken business models, reduced lifetime of large companies, the speed and complexity increasing, disruption is becoming more of a normal, and then companies will have to learn to cycle through business model, which was the term we used at the time. And we really when we look back at this, we really carried this with us. Now, in the report today, we sort of take a refresh and say, okay, that was 7 years ago. What do we see today? What do we see today? And this is one of those slides that I really welcome the discussion and the conversations, and I'll be very happy to challenge some of these things. But when we look at strategy today, we really see this shift from resource extraction economy across many sectors, value chains, assumed stability, and this still clinging on to a traditional core business model, which many companies still do very vividly and passionately. Today, of course, we're seeing something else. We're seeing data-driven economies. Tech companies are taking more and more of the value captures on stock exchanges. We're seeing the rise of platforms, much more focus on collaborative ecosystems, clusters, and entrepreneurial ecosystems. Transformation is becoming a keyword in pretty much every sector. And increasingly, companies have understood that we need to expand from a business model focus to a business model portfolio focus, including building across your core, growth, and explore. Now, for some of you, this is not rocket science. It's not groundbreaking. It's things that we've seen and heard and discussed and worked on for many years. But for the large majority of companies around the world, they're still built on that left-hand side of this picture. So in the report, we have some essays and we have some stories where we're trying to shed some light and saying, what does that actually mean? What does it mean from a people perspective? What does it mean from a delivery perspective? And what does it actually mean? And I really welcome for the next 7 years, I mean, that's the time we're talking about, different people contributing to this picture and contributing to this shift to really figure out what does that mean? What does this from to mean in practice? So in the report, we also have some ideas around what is strategy in 2020. We have some brand new concepts that we're just rolling out, but I welcome you to join us in the report to read more about that and share your thinking on what is strategy in 2020 as this evolves. Next, I would really like to introduce you to some of our guests. I mean, the report is really built on their work. We have been fortunate to have 18 people from pretty much all over the world join us, bringing their perspectives. And in this program today, you're going to meet several of them. We have with us from Italy, Scott Newton; from California, Rick Rasmussen; from Belgium, Enrico MASET; from Australia, Matt Kerr; from Mexico, Javier Sevilla; and then also in the Ukraine, Mikola. So we're going to get their stories, and then we're going to be having some discussions. And again, you guys joining us, feel free to ask any questions, feel free to come up with any comments, and we'll get that multi-flow going. So on that note, Enrico, welcome, my friend.
Hello, everybody.
It's really a pleasure to have you here, and I'm looking forward to getting your insights. We have you, we have Javier, and we have Rick, and we're going to be getting some quick stories from each of you. Maybe Javier, do you want to kick off the show, get us some perspectives from your work in Mexico?
Yeah, sure. And first of all, thank you, everybody. It's a real honor to be here sharing our story. And as Christian was saying, I'm based in Mexico. We run a small consultancy firm here in Mexico. And this has been a really nice journey. And as Christian was saying, I mean, we've seen how strategy and innovation has been changing in the last years. And we're happy to share our story here. The first thing I want to say is a couple of months ago, one of our clients was asking us why change, because everything was so good. I mean, the last year was the best year they had in the last decade. So they already had a schedule reviewing their strategy. But basically, the main question was, why change now when everything just looks great? So maybe that's a great question, because the problem when everything seems to go fine is that maybe you don't have any reason to change, but actually it's the best time that you can change, because you have the resources, you don't have pressure, and you can basically do anything you want. So we encourage our clients to begin at that stage. If they are in that stage, that's the best time they can begin a transformation in their business. And then I'm going to tell you what's my favorite tool. My favorite tool is the simulator. We have 3 simulations within strategy tools. And the reason why I love this simulation is, especially the transformation one, is that it's so flexible. You can do basically anything you want. And the energy that it brings with the group of people participating is just amazing. And the second thing is one of the stories, or one of the reasons people really enjoy it, is because it's fun. It's built on gamification. But at the end of the day, I mean, you need to focus before having a session using the simulation on what's your goal. Otherwise, it's so flexible that you can end up anywhere. So one of the recommendations is that before you begin a simulation, just have a clear goal of what you want to achieve. Maybe you want to focus in the session on the things that are changing in your industry, in your arena that you are competing, or maybe you want to question your client if they are still believing or focusing only on their core business. And suddenly, if you ask them what's the motor of their future growth, maybe you will begin seeing some faces that say that they have really no idea. So that's the first point of what you have to do before that. And other ways on how I use it is on discovery sessions. So just inviting anybody that wants to participate in this session. We can do it now online. At the beginning, this was meant to be in-person sessions, but we've been seeing that running this online is also really interesting. And now we're going to use it here in Mexico as part of our learning programs on digital programs that we are just launching next week. And then I want to share some other recommendations with you. And the second one is just don't call it a GAME, okay? It's, even though this is based on a GAME, it's not really that. I mean, and if you just use that word when you are just beginning a conversation with your client, it's going to change completely the focus of the discussion. Okay, so you just say that this is just part of your toolkit. This is just part of the things that you're going to use to show them how the world of strategy is changing and how they can take advantage of it. Okay, and then when you run it and you experience what's going on with the simulation, you'll see that there are a lot of stories behind all the events that happen in the simulation. And all of these stories are based on real cases. So it's really nice if you are the moderator of the session, that you know some of the stories behind those events. Because in that way, I mean, you just can connect more with people and they can see you as a real expert that knows what's going on in real world. It's not just based on that moment of the GAME, okay? So I'm happy to share with you all this stuff. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them in a couple of minutes. Thanks, Chris.
No, thank you, Javier, and I look forward to getting some more insights from you. Next, we have joining us from Belgium, Italian by background. We have Enrico MASET. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Chris, and all the other for the platform here. So my story started a little bit at the end of last year. So I was working in a large company for 9 years, and I've been seeing the struggle about going through transformation and the struggle about going through strategy thinking and strategy execution. So I decided to change and move into consultancy. I was looking for what would be a right fit for me. And at that point, I found Steep Consult. Steep Consult is a small consultancy company of about 50 people at the moment, part of a larger ecosystem. And what they were doing, they were actually switching from an IT-oriented company to a business-oriented company. And so I think it was the right moment to do this. So during this period, full COVID time, I discovered strategy tools. And that was February, just to give you an idea of the impact it could have. So the strategy tool has really a good impact on me and big impact on my current consultancy company, Steep Consult. And what we're trying now is to translate this to our client. So when we're moving about how I use the strategy tools, the real point that now we are moving towards a new area. We are like moving towards management consulting. What we want to do is to show what is our differentiator compared to the standard strategy players. And what I really like to use is the Transformational Company Index and the industry shift map. Why this? Because this really helpful to break the ice in really short time, and it set the tone for a discussion that is really forcing on the main leverage of an organization. Now, this is just one of the ways that we are using the strategy tool, because this tool can be used in a really quick format, as I say, to break the ice and to show that you can do differently. Or we could work on the same canvas with a similar group of people for like weeks on it, and to really, really more stick into the company. So at the moment, what we're trying to do is to evolve this from break the ice towards more a solution-oriented approach. And what we're trying to do with our client today is to co-develop with them a journey to more towards strategy in a modern way, and that is fueled by the strategy tools way of thinking. So that has been really, really great for me, being part of the community as well. I learn a lot from point of view. And what is really nice, that everything that we can discuss in our weekly or monthly meeting, I can bounce it with clients straight away. And it's so good to see how the small cycle and the feedback loop that you can have to reassess the content and reassess where the client wants to be. And now at Steep Consult, we can help them. So definitely has been really, really good to discover strategy tool, work with strategy tool and build with strategy.
Enrico, thank you very much. I have several questions. We're going to come back, but I really want you to guide us through what you mean. You can work for some weeks on some of these tools. For example, the industry shifts map. We see a lot of people using the tools in a workshop, maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, and that's it. But you open a door that's very different. So we're going to come back to that. Thank you, Enrico. Next, we have a great friend of ours joining us from California at 3 a.m. Good morning, Rick. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. It's 3:20, so I'm a little bit more awake. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be part of this whole webinar. I wanted to start off by saying these are the pages out of the actual report. So what you'll see is in each case an introduction to the individual that wrote it and talks through their story, and then how they actually use the tools. And so let me lead you through my pages here. So quick introduction, that's UC Berkeley in the background. And my preferred strategy tool is the Innovation Canvas. Now this canvas has been around in various forms for a while, and I use it in multiple different environments. So for me, I teach in the classroom, I teach at UC Berkeley and other places around the world, Ukraine, Abu Dhabi, Korea, and others. I also, in addition to teaching, work as a corporate consultant. And this tool, not only does it allow me to benchmark somebody, but it's also an aspirational tool that allows me to lead somebody through the start of a journey in a little bit of a free-form manner. So next slide, this is the tool itself, and it breaks things out into essentially core innovation, which is innovation going on within a company, say supply chain management, working on customer satisfaction, all the things that you can do in your current operations. But that typically is not enough. You will survive, but not thrive and not move forward unless you're doing something different. Logical improvements is developing new customers, developing new products. A lot of people call it incremental or adjacent innovation. It is moving your company further along the timeline. And then there's the Silicon Valley style of radical innovation, which is to take something and really establish a moonshot. Now, when I talk to people about this, we say, well, where do you invest your R&D dollars? There's a golden ratio that says you invest 70% in current, 20% in logical improvements, and 10% in radical. And that happens whether you're in good times or bad. And you're allowing yourself the opportunity to continue to innovate over time. So that's the slide deck. So you can use it in a bunch of different ways. Next slide, please. Yeah. And so here's how I use it in different environments, either in group settings, where we're sitting down and mapping things out. This is classic strategy tools mode, where you're working with small, intimate groups. I also, at the far end, use it in larger groups and large settings, so on, that allows me to benchmark across maybe an ecosystem or a number of individual companies. Next slide. And so it has impact, and everybody has an impact statement, and these are kind of fun to read as you're going through the report. And then finally, recommendation to others. And so as you're looking at each of these tools that everybody brings up in these 18 different examples, you'll see the way in which people do this. And so you can take inspiration from others, and then also take this as a starting point and use the tool in your own way. So this is a great book, and we'll, please pay close attention to the other examples. I think you'll learn a lot in this short period of time. So thanks, Chris.
No, thank you. Thank you, Rick. I mean, like you said, I think that all of us definitely, our team here can learn, and we are learning as much as possible as we read them, because like you said, you have the classroom setting, then you have the corporate setting, and of course those are very, very different environments and groups to be working with. So Rick, thank you. I want to ask just a couple of questions before we proceed. Enrico, you opened the door. You said work over sort of a long time. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, first stuff is like we're discussing about strategy, we're discussing about transformation. So our timeline is pretty long.
Mm.
We know where we want to go. It will take a long time. And to go there, we have to make sure that we have the right mass and the right follow-up in an organization to make it stick and to make it going in the other way, because we're going ahead of even like, I don't know, executive committee time frame. So that is really important. So without too far, what is important, this is client and customer base. So I think this is really important. We can bring the tools. I can show the tools and leave them work 1 hour, and that is a funny time, and they discover something new. Or I can really put these tools to build new gears in their organization and to make sure that there are the people inside the organization that they use it. And that takes time, and that takes energy, and that takes a good volume of stakeholder management and a lot of people involved. So that is what we would like to do with our clients.
That's a great point. Great point. Javier, maybe I can ask you a follow-up question. So you have extensive experience working as a strategy and innovation consultant in Mexico. What's your view on working visually? You know, going from having everything in your head as an expert to actually being able to present and engage in a visual manner. What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, actually, I mean, you know, there are people that are more visual than than just listening. And a couple of years back, when we just found the tools that you were building, I mean, that was just amazing, because visual tools just help you during sessions, and they are so easy to use. They are so user-friendly and practical that everybody, as soon as see a picture, I mean, they want just to begin working on it. I mean, and it's easier to share their points of view, and it's also easier to understand what's going on in the minds of everybody else. Because I mean, you can just discuss and just say your opinion, but not everybody is going to get the main point of that you're trying to get across. So using these visual tools, it's amazing. I mean, it's just, it drives another kind of conversation, and it's, they are really good. So, and they are easy, and that's the best part of it. And usually that's the most difficult part. I mean, just to try to put in a few words in visual formats, what's going on in your mind. So you should just use it, and you're going to come back for more.
Maybe, thank you. A follow-up to you, Rick, on the same topic. So, you know, we both share a passion for teaching, and the traditional way of teaching is the lecturer standing in front and speaking. But how do you see the use of artifacts and visual tools and canvases and gamification change the learning experience?
Well, first off, unfortunately, we're not really allowed to be in front of classrooms and give lectures and so on. So by nature, everything's moved online. And what you need to do is to engage your audience and to involve them in the process. And that doesn't mean sitting here in front of Zoom 8 hours a day. It really means providing individual tools, canvases, things for both individuals and groups to work on. So you hand over assignments, you set them up in breakout rooms, and you get them cranking on assignments, come back, you reverse the classroom, they get presentations, so on exactly what they found. And so there are, the tool set is ideal for these types of environments, because you honestly have dozens of different interesting interconnected tools at your disposal that you can pull forward given where your audience is at any given point in time, whether a classroom setting or a corporate innovation setting.
What would be a recommendation, Rick, for other faculty, both in, you know, the current COVID situation, but also as we gradually get out of it? What would be your recommendation if they wanted to sort of start thinking about bringing this into their classrooms?
So first off, there are training programs that are really well written. I mean, like nothing I've ever seen that lead you through the tool sets. So there's scale up, there's innovation, training, there's corporate transformation, and so on. So I highly recommend, if you're an academician that is used to sort of getting things from papers and textbooks, to actually step into this new environment, take the training, get absorbed in it, so on. You can do that over the course of maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and it's entertaining as well as informative at the same time. From that, you're armed, and now you have the capability of bringing this into a classroom and setting up your own curriculum. But they typically center around innovation, entrepreneurship, things along those lines. And you know, I think it spans both the business as well as the engineering schools, to be sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to take one question from David Lansfield, and I'll leave it up to Enrico, Javier, Rick to jump on this. So whoever wants it gets it. But the question is, how do you work? How do you draw out ideas and challenges of people who are more introvert and less comfortable in a group session? For example, when you're running a simulation or working, you know, in visual group settings. So how do you engage the introverts?
Yeah, but I can jump on it. I think that first of all, I mean, having like a visual tools help you, because it's easier, I mean, to just write something on paper or on a whiteboard than actually saying the words. So that's easier for people that are introvert, because they don't have to speak or say what they have in their mind. So that's like an easier way of doing it. And another one is just maybe just directing a straight question to them, an easier one, and that's going to give them confidence. So, I mean, as moderator, I mean, you can use a lot of tools and you can use a lot of tips to try to encourage a discussion, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's not the tools or the simulation or whatever, it's the discussion that is behind all of these tools. So that's important part of it.
Great. Javier, Enrico, Rick, thank you. We're going to come back to you in a little bit. We're starting to see more questions. That's wonderful. We're stacking them up for the Q&A. But next, Scott, we're going to take a spin through Italy, right?
Good afternoon and greetings from Northern Italy. It's a beautiful day here, 31 degrees and sunny. So just like Norway for weather.
It is indeed. So we have yourself and we have Matt from Australia, and our friend from the Ukraine. He was unable to connect in for some reason. So maybe we should kick off with Matt.
Hi everyone. There I am. Yeah, it's great to be here, and it's great to be part of the Strategy Tools community. Yeah, so I guess I like to think about strategy tools really being positioned at the intersection of kind of innovation, design, and strategy. And that's where we do a lot of our work. So IE, where I work, has a heritage as a kind of digital agency, and then getting into design. And we've come in as kind of innovation and strategy consultants, and really started to bring all those pieces together. And so having a visual tool, visual design and collaboration tool like strategy tools is really fantastic for us, because it helps bring everyone together regardless of their background and have really rich discussions, and also build great alignment that you can then start to act on. So yeah, my favorite strategy tool at the moment is the industry map. And the example I draw on was when we were doing a product strategy for a client. And the client was an energy gentailer, so they have generation assets, but they also have a kind of retail business as well. We were working on the retail side of the business. So we needed to help them frame their product strategy, because they needed to decide how to evolve their core energy offer in the face of decarbonisation, decentralisation, disruption. So energy industry, there's a lot going on and it has big impacts on product strategy. But they're also trying to become a multi-product retailer as well. So they're moving into telco, so mobile, broadband. And so we needed to help them think about how they do that with adjacencies and moving into another industry. And so we needed to quickly frame trends across two industries, both telco and energy, and the industry map was fantastic for that. We could have gone away and done some deep industry research for a couple of weeks and come back and told our client a whole heap of stuff they probably already knew. But instead, what the industry map allowed us to do was to quickly get the right experts in the room who had all the domain expertise and get that out, get it on paper. And then we could kind of quickly move on to the more important stuff, which wasn't an industry study. It was figuring out what those industry trends meant for the product strategy. So it was a great way to move quickly, get the information we needed, and then move on to the more important stuff. So for example, in the telco or the energy industry, we kind of quickly landed on themes like regulation and a lack of trust. So the regulators had got in because consumers were confused and didn't trust the energy retailers. We had orchestration and batteries, which you might have expected. We had low engagement with a commoditized product. So what does that mean for a product strategy? And lots of new market entrants coming in. So innovative propositions coming up from below in the market. And for telco, there was also some commoditization, but more engagement in a telco product, which has kind of really interesting impacts when you're talking about engaging with customers in a multi-product environment. And telcos were kind of engaging in differentiation through service offerings as their network assets were becoming more commoditized, and kind of bolt-ons like entertainment. So you can kind of see the themes that came out quite quickly. And we were able to really zero in on the ones that were important to our product strategy, because we needed to help our client understand how they would respond to those with their product offers in market. What sort of product propositions should they explore? So yeah, that's an example of the industry map, how we quickly got alignment, got what we needed from running the workshop, and then we're able to then move on to the more important, bigger questions of what do we do with this information? How do we respond to it?
Hey, Matt, thanks a lot for that. That's a lot of information. I'm going to come back to you with a few questions in a moment. I see we're getting some interesting questions here in the Q&A as well. So I'll just briefly touch on a couple of things. Can you move to the next slide, please? So greetings from Italy. My name is Scott Newton. I've joined Strategy Tools in 2019 following a work session with Transform. And so probably as with many of you, you know that your clients or the companies that you work at need to transform. In many cases, they want to transform, and yet they're not able to do that. And the question is why? They feel stuck some way. And I think I was looking, how does this work in the real world? Probably many of you have been to your high school reunion or your class where you get back together after 20 years, 30 years, and you come together, and there was a guy there who was really cool in high school. Maybe he was the star football player, something similar. And what you found is, while the rest of you have all changed, he's just still that same way. He's the same person he was when high school finished. It's a little bit jarring or shocking. And you're saying, why is this guy like this? How can we help him change? And I think for many companies, it's the same thing. They were really great at what they did. That's why they became #1, or why they have so many shareholders, or why people were so proud to work there. And over time, the industry, the environment they work in has changed, and they're stuck. And we can see this in automotive today. We know some of the great legacy players are really stuck, I think, as like the high school football player, that they're still reliving how cool was the 1964 Corvette. And so when we get these people together, how do we confront the elephant in the room? And the way that we do that is with Transform. And Transform as a simulation gets people together, and they have to make decisions about running their company. And in making these decisions, they have to decide how to create value. And what you'll find is that people quite quickly default to their corporate behaviors. And in this default, they aren't able to create value, and they get very frustrated. And so then this is a great point to open the discussion and say, okay, this is a simulation. This is not real life, But if we look at our company or groups of companies, where is this showing up? At the boards, in management, in the way we interact with our customers, and how are we going to fix that? So shifting this from a theoretical, oh, let's run a simulation, to really touching, how is this company going to survive, and how can we create value for all our stakeholders? So from there, I just want to shift into a little bit of discussion with Matt, because Matt, you and I have had some great conversations on confronting things with clients. And when you talk about helping your clients develop a new product strategy, what do you mean by that? Can you give me a concrete example of how that works?
Yeah, so the way we like to go about it is we like to help our clients develop opportunity areas. So we're trying to leave the space for the product team to still go and do customer validation and actually explore what customers really want. But we want to frame that against everything that's happening both within the organization and where they want to take their strategy and their products, and things that are happening outside. So we're trying to build a picture that says, these are great areas to go after because of what's happening in the environment around us, but then leave space for the product teams to go, okay, now we're going to go and talk to some customers and really understand. So we suggest sample propositions based on other things we're seeing in the market, but we don't say this is the answer, because there's a very important step afterwards, which is you've got to validate with customers. You've got to go and do some hard work with customers to understand if the proposition is going to resonate. Just because someone else is doing something interesting in the market, you can't see behind the scenes what's happening in their business. So it might look great on paper or on their website, but you've still got to go away and even if you think it's the right direction to move your business in towards maybe what they're doing, or to differentiate from that, we still got to really get the customer insights to drive that.
Fantastic. So this is, as a closing point, we'll hand it back over to Christian for some questions. But this is really helping the customer look outside of their own environment on what's going on in the broader world, so that they can grab those big new opportunities and solve the problems that are frustrating their customers. Does that sum it up in one way or another?
Yeah, that's a great way to sum it up. I think they'll always have a strategy of what they want to do. You look out into the market and say, how do we get from what we want to do to something that's relevant to the market? And then once you decide the direction, you go and ask the customers if it's actually a good idea or not.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Matt. It was great to dig into this, and it's been great hearing from the others. Christian, I know the questions are stacking up quite a lot here, so I'll hand it back over to you to moderate a few of these together with all of us.
Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you, Matt, for sharing that insight from down under. I'm going to open with one question to everyone here, and then we're going to start digging into the question that's been stacking up. So if we look at the traditional process of how strategy gets made, there has been a tendency, still is, for a small group, typically a management team, working with outside consultants, where a lot of the brain power and a lot of the thinking happens in closed sessions, small groups, and relying largely on external experts. Gary Hamel has written extensively about the need to blow up the strategy process, to make strategy much more inclusive, much more democratic, to tap into the wisdom of the crowd, and really make it much more of a involvement exercise. Maybe I can open this question. If you guys look at how you are using strategy tools, what is the user experience? How are you engaging or not engaging? How are you involving or not involving people from all over the organization, as opposed to strategy being made in the dark corners of the executive suite? Anybody want to have a stab at that to begin with? Javier.
I think that's a really good question, because traditionally, I mean, organizations and employees inside those organizations think that strategy only belongs to the C-suite. And I'd like to rephrase or quote some of the things that Rita McGrath shares, and it's that I mean, innovation and changing, it's usually seen around the corners. So the people that it's actually involved or engaged with the actual real clients are typically the ones that are the first that perceive that something is changing. So when we organize these strategy sessions, we like to invite people not only from the suite, but also people that is actually, I mean, interacting every day with the real customers. So we encourage them to at least have around 20 or 30% of people that it's not part of this management team. So that's a good starting point. And then, I mean, you can do a lot of things during the communication phase, because otherwise it's just going to be part of a big, thick book that summarizes your strategy. So that doesn't work at all.
Great, thank you. So let's see, we have a few questions I was just gonna start digging into, and let's take a question from Luca. And again, I'm gonna open it to everyone. So considering a consultancy process, so the traditional consultancy process, the main phases are commonly analysis, diagnostic, design, development, and then there's the implementation stage. What are the opportunities and constraints that you guys see in using strategy tools to work differently on strategy? Anyone? Enrico, you want to have a first go, and then Scott, I'll love to have your thoughts on that.
Yeah. You know, I think this goes a little bit kind of a waterfall model, as we call it, step-by-step approach. What I think is important that now the timelines or the activities are becoming parallel. So you don't do just the thinking at the beginning. The thinking has to go and keep going, looping around to deliver more and more input for the next phase. And that's so go on as well. So we can really stuck on this. We just have to, for me, to multiply and scale up this and to make it really like a short feedback loop.
Scott, you wanna add to that?
Yeah, just add briefly. I think that in any work we do with companies, there are some underlying assumptions that the company believes are how the world will unfold. And if we can uncover those assumptions, make them visible, test them, and really almost question if they're right, we are able to quickly shift the consulting engagement. And it moves from being something theoretical to something very high value. So my recommendation or my answer to the question would be, use the tools and use your time together with the company to make the assumptions and the thinking clear and test those assumptions, because that's where there's going to be some gaps or errors. And if you're able to close those, then you're able to dramatically improve the value that your client can generate.
Great, Scott. I'll just quickly add. So in the Strategy Tools Global Coaches Program, we go through a concept that we call strategy process and strategy journey. So the strategy process is more the traditional sense of, just like you mentioned here, Luca, where you have outside experts coming in and they sort of have more of the answers. They will run you through a traditional process. And for some companies, that may be the best approach. But increasingly, we see we need a different way of doing strategy. And that's what we call strategy journey. There's a growing amount of literature on it. McKinsey has written some really good pieces, for example. But the strategy journey is much more ambiguity, much more exploration, much more learning, much more curiosity, and much more involving diverse stakeholders very, very differently. So it's the process of making the strategy which changes. And we have a lot of work happening in that field right now. But great. So we have, let's see, next questions. Let's see. David Lansfield is asking, curious where people consider value in their strategy work. I find it often comes too late, wasting time on interesting, but maybe not material, or maybe not the most important ideas. So maybe, Scott, I can bring it back to you again. I know you've been doing a lot of work on this sort of connecting value to strategy work. So what would you bring to David? Curious where people consider value in strategy work.
Yeah, this is always a question of contention, maybe with clients, etc. I mean, value in strategy work comes when people start doing things differently. And David, I'll tie that into the other part of the question you have is, how well do your clients understand what strategy actually means?
Yeah.
So we start every engagement with a definition of strategy, which we call the framework of choices that determine the purpose and path of the organization. And we repeat that many, many times throughout our engagements. And one of the reasons we do that is because everyone, when they use the word strategy, means something different. So to our clients, value in strategy comes when they do something differently, and that behavior of doing something differently leads them to sustainable EBITDA. So you'll notice in the report, I talk about we've tracked more than €1 billion in sustainable EBITDA. We can actually point to where the company changed direction and what that meant for the future of their business. So I guess I'd summarize by saying it's all about focus. Strategy is, as Ogilvy used to say, strategy is sacrifice. It's not doing more, it's doing less. And the question is, what do you take away? And that's where it becomes quite a personal discussion.
We have also a comment really towards Rick. Rick, students and entrepreneurship. We use the phrase strategy tools, but of course there's much more under that umbrella. We have a startup series, we have supercluster series, we have ecosystems, we have business development, and we have a brand new series that we haven't launched yet called strategy teams. But that's supposed to be secret for now. Rick, tell us a little bit about entrepreneurship, teaching entrepreneurship by using strategy tools.
Sure. We talked a little bit about getting out of the classroom and away from lecture. The way that most entrepreneurship classes are being taught today is experiential learning, and that is learn by doing. So you roll up your sleeves, students ideate, come up with a proposed problem to solve, solution. You throw them out in the world and have them speak with customers. What Strategy Tools does is connect a lot of that real world experience that students are experiencing to the first time into a concrete framework. Take Scale Up as an example. Scale Up then takes a lot of the lessons learned and puts them into a simulation where a facilitator is able to lead students through the building of an early stage company all the way through, particularly the fundraising process, and talk through lessons learned, vocabulary, best practices, all the things that are really needed to build the company, again, outside the classroom environment. So they're, I think, ideally suited for upper division undergrads, grad students, and even beyond, the executive teams as well, that are trying to, again, connect this theoretical development of relatively early stage entrepreneurial startups into something that's concrete and tangible.
Great, thank you, Rick. So we're actually coming up on the hour. I want to ask everyone a closing question, and try to keep your answers short and focused. And the answer is, sorry, the question is, on a personal level, what's been your biggest personal learning or your biggest personal change, if you will, as you've been working through this? Maybe we can start with Javier, and then we do Enrico.
Yeah, I think that the main change is that you need to see strategy in collaboration with innovation. Otherwise, I mean, you're just going to be stuck in the past. So that's the main takeaway. And you cannot think about one without thinking about the other, because that way you're going to waste resources.
Thank you. Enrico?
Similar approach. So foresight for me is an important part. So you need to have a view on the future. And in the other way, we have to really dig on the reason why the company are in the current state. Really at the beginning of that.
Great, thank you. Matt, Scott, same question. Biggest learning?
Personal learning for me is it's not all about how you apply the canvases in a workshop. I've now started thinking of strategy tools as kind of a visual encyclopedia of strategy. And I think Javier mentioned before about visual learners. Having those pictures in your mind can just help you every day in client engagements. And because it's a global community of kind of leading edge thinkers, you've got like an up to the minute encyclopedia of strategy at your disposal. So yeah, I think that's the way I like to think about it now.
Thank you. Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, it's really about combining the action of the simulation with the action in the company. And the biggest breakthrough to me has been how much progress I can make with a management team, a board, an exec ed group, when I start with a simulation, as opposed to starting with a case study, a story, even a motivational guest speaker. I've had some really great speakers come in, but it doesn't have the same impact as having the person there in the simulation fighting to attempt to create value.
Thank you very much. And then Rick, we're gonna, when you hear these stories, Rick, and we have very different stories from different parts of the world, what is the one thing or the top things that you hear here?
You know, I love what Matt just said about the encyclopedia of strategy, because strategy is such an amorphous field, and all of us are learning through case studies and what we read in the papers and watching other companies and so on. And what the tools do is boil down a lot of these semi-abstract concepts into something that is really tangible, workable, and so on. So for me, at least, what I've gotten out of this are the tools themselves, how to put them to use in a way that somebody takes a look at one of these canvases or tools and says, aha, I get it. I now know what I need to do. And it leads them often through, the next steps or even an entire journey all the way through. So I've loved the tools in a way, in the way that it streamlines the teaching process, and also the engagements that I've had with my consulting clients as well.
One thing, Rick, that we haven't touched on at all, briefly, ecosystems and innovation clusters. You've done a lot of work in that space. Yep. And what we're trying to do is to provide the tools and the concepts that people like yourself can go put to use. How do you see the strategy tools being applicable to ecosystems and clusters around the world?
The ecosystems are interesting. You think about how do ecosystems come together, where you have disparate people, you have those entrepreneurs that want to have a boost to the system, you have government officials that are trying to do a good job and serve the taxpayer base, you have academicians, you have corporations who are also trying to build out ecosystems. And to various degrees, they come together, they have their cocktail parties, they try to figure out exactly what to do. But the tools themselves, the ecosystem tools that are here and the simulations that spin out are a way to collect all these various disparate parties in one place and work towards a common goal. And when you put them in a room, at first there might be a little tension, but soon it's relieved by the fact that people are now seeing some sort of a structure through which they can work through common problems. It's magic. It's pretty amazing when it happens.
Rick, thank you very much for your closing summary and observation. Matt, Javier, Scott, Enrico, and of course, everybody joining us. from pretty much all over the world. Thank you for your questions. We have tried to be able to answer most of them in the chat or in the Q&A, so I hope we got everything covered. I do, of course, strongly recommend you to download the report. You will probably find more questions, hopefully some answers as well. But one thing I'll guarantee you is that you will be introduced to a range of really cool people sharing their perspectives from all over the world, whether it's Alan in Canada or Victor in the Netherlands or James in South Africa. So thank you very much for joining. If you don't have, you can go to strategytools.io and you'll find the report right there. I look forward to hopefully hearing some of your stories and most importantly, watching the community grow over time. Scott, thank you very much for helping out. Javier, Matt, Enrico, Rick, thank you. And I wish everyone a wonderful day and happy reading on the report. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.